All right, fifth graders, starting off our new unit on adding and subtracting decimals. Today it is on estimating. So our goal for today is to be able to say, I can estimate sums and differences of decimals. Remember, sums is when I'm adding, differences is when I'm subtracting. So the problem we're going to think about is a phone has 32 gigabytes of storage. Phones take up 8 and 25/100 gigabytes of the storage, and music takes up 3 and 62/100 gigabytes. So you might have seen that on a phone, showing how much of the data or the space is used by each thing. How can you determine about how many gigabytes of storage are left? Notice that word about is going to be important. So if we think about what question we need to answer first, well, we need to know about how many gigabytes of storage the photos and the music use together before I can figure out how much is left. So how could we write an addition equation to represent the number? Sometimes when we're thinking about problems, we can write equations to help us visualize what's happening. So if we're trying to represent photos and music, S is the photos and music. We could say, well, 8 and 25/100 plus 3 and 62/100 equals S. Okay, so if we add those together, we'll get the total that we're using. So then, do we need an exact answer or an estimate? Well, if it says about how many are left, we just need an estimate. So on your notes, in your blank, it says sometimes we need an blank and sometimes we can blank. So sometimes we need an exact answer, is that first blank, and sometimes we can estimate, is the second one. Sometimes I don't need to know exactly something. I can just say, well, it's about this much. So sometimes we need an exact answer, sometimes we can estimate. So in this case, we can just use an estimate. So how would I estimate the sum? Well, in order to estimate, we can round decimals. Okay, so we can round decimals. In this case, we're going to round to the nearest whole number, because we just want to know about how much it is. So if we round to the nearest whole number, that will tell us. So then, if I round to the nearest whole number, like we were doing last chapter, well, 8, and I look next door, the 2 tells me to stay the same, so I round to 8. 3 is my whole number. 6 tells me to go up to 4. So I have 8 and 4 as my estimates, my rounded numbers. How do we do? Yep, 8 and 4. So then we can add those and get 12. So together they take up about 12 gigabytes. Might not be exactly that. If we do look and we compare to the actual, we can see, oh, we were very close. 11 and 87/100 is very close to 12. So on your notes, estimating can help us know if our answer is reasonable. Is it realistic? Were we close? Because guess what? If I add it up and I get like 2, I'm like, whoa, something went wrong. So either I estimated wrong or my actual one, I did something wrong. So it's a good chance to check and make sure we added correctly. Like on our actual, maybe we forgot to line up the decimals, so I added wrong. It's a good way to check ourselves and say, whoa, that was not right. So that's one reason why we estimate, is to help us know if what we got is reasonable, if we are correct. Yes, in this case it was reasonable. So now if we're figuring out how much is left, well, if we use P, a letter to represent how much is left, we could say the whole thing minus what we've used equals what's left. So then when they say we're going to use compatible numbers, it means pick ones that are easy to, in this case, subtract. 32 can stay 32. If I round that to the nearest whole number and I get 12, 32 and 12 are easy to subtract. So then if I pick those and I can estimate and say, I have about 20 gigabytes left. Yeah. So if I had picked, say, 11, I could still do 32 minus 11, but 32 and 12 are maybe just a little easier to do. Like if I did 30 and 12, those are maybe a little harder to subtract in my head. So that's why I pick numbers that go well together. So we say about 20 gigabytes left. So yes, we can estimate by rounding, or we can do compatible numbers, meaning numbers that go well together. I like to call that like special rounding. We'll see more of that when we get to division. So practice one. How much more does Hero weigh than Layla? 2 doggies. So I can say, okay, 82.98, 86.74. About how much more? About tells me I can estimate. How much more tells me I'm comparing, so I should subtract. And then I like to generally use rounding. Okay, if I round to the nearest whole number, I get 83. Round to the nearest whole number, I get 87. 87 minus 83 is pretty easy to do. It's just 4 apart. So Hero weighs about 4 pounds more. I'm assuming pounds because they're dogs. Then that would make the most sense. All right, let's do some practice. So I gave you some practice space in case you want to write it down and round and actually write it down. Don't give me an actual answer though. Make sure you are just estimating. So what is a reasonable estimate for the sum? Choose what you think. Now there are different ways to do it, but if you chose to round to the nearest whole number, you would have gotten 10 and 4. 8 tells my 9 to go up to 10. 3 tells my 4 to stay the same. So then we estimate and we get 14. Again, we are just estimating. So if you chose the actual one, that's why that one wasn't right, because we're just estimating. We'll do just a couple more. Reasonable estimate for the sum here. Again, choose what you think. All right, if you round it to the nearest whole number, 44. Again, 3 is my ones. 8 tells me go up to 44. 56. Okay, 56 can just stay 56. Adding those together, well, 40 and 50 is 90. 4 and 6 is 10. So I'm going to get 100. And if you wrote that down, no worries. Sometimes I like to add them down and not do them in my head just because I'm less likely to make a mistake. All right, let's find one that's the difference. As always, if you need more help, make sure you ask. So, what can I estimate the difference to be? All right, well, if I round to the whole number, I get 8. Whole number, I get 6. If you need more help with rounding, make sure you ask. I can subtract those. So 2 is a reasonable estimate. And this will come into play when we actually find actual answers and say, was my answer close to 2? If not, I must have subtracted wrong. So it's a good clue. Let me know if you need more help. Good luck.